Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Coastal Resilience Talks. That is a joint webinar series dedicated to exploring solutions for resilient coastal futures. Let me briefly introduce the initiative behind today's event. As you can see, this webinar is part of a monthly series where we explore case studies, research, insights, and stories of resilient coastal communities, along with real-world solutions to protect and restore coastal ecosystems. But let's take a closer look at the broad framework that inspired this conversation. Okay. We are, as I said, in the framework of the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science, and as a partnership, we address the decade challenge, increased community resilience to ocean and coastal risks. And we aim to the decade outcomes, a safe ocean. To reach this vision, we do need multidisciplinary research, but also a strong partnership of institutions. And actually, this is our partner alliance network. It includes the DCC-CR, and Deltares and CMCC that I am part of. So let me spend a couple of minutes to introduce myself. My name is Federica Stella Blas, and actually I work at CMCC. I'm Scientific Program Manager at the Global Coast as a New Frontier strategic program. And that's why I'm here, and I'm very honored to introduce this webinar. A very quick information for the community. You have the chance to submit a pilot site. We have extended the deadline, so you can do it until the 31st of March, 2026. For those who doesn't know Global Coast Network, well, it's a huge network of 135 pilot sites. That spans 70 countries worldwide, as you can see, and more than 225 partner institutions. What are the goals of Global Coast? Well, Global Coast aims to compare and contrast share replicable solutions between pilot sites and regions, and connect solutions globally, engage cloud technology to support services, and other goals that you can easily find on our website. You can scan the QR code to get more information and on Global Coast Network and on how to submit a pilot site. So we can now move to today's webinar. We are very pleased to host Maria Giovanna Stoppani today. She's a PhD candidate at the University of Palermo, and she will present a speech entitled Connecting Disciplines Through Social-Ecological Systems. Just a very small information on her background and expertise. As I said, she's a PhD student at the University of Palermo. She investigates the relationship between human communities and coastal and marine ecosystems. Her research focus includes social-ecological system frameworks, small-scale fisheries, and local ecological knowledge. She's got a strong interest in environmental justice and transdisciplinary methodologies applied to SSF governance processes. Finally, these pieces of technical information, your audio and video are deactivated by default, and we hope that it's okay for you. But if you need to interact with us, you can simply write your comments or questions in the Q&A section. We will be glad, and especially Maria Giovanna will be glad to answer to your questions at the end of the speech. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, so participating in the webinar means that you consent to the recording and its future use for educational and promotional purposes. I think I'm done, so I leave the floor to Maria Giovanna, and we'll see after the speech.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Federica, for the introduction. Wow, I'm super honored to be here today, and I really want to thank you, the DCC-CR and the CMCC for the invitation. Meanwhile, I will share my screen. Okay, please confirm me if you can see it and if you can see the full screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Great.
Okay.
It's really incredible pleasure to bring you my experience today, and we will focus. This webinar will be focused on social-ecological system frameworks as a tool to understand social ecological systems of coastal and marine territories. So, wait, okay, move. A super quick introduction because Federica already introduced me, but I would like to focus on my background because mainly today I'm bringing you my early career ocean professional perspective on trying to investigate a field that is multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary and tries to be transdisciplinary, and it's very new and takes a lot of effort. So it was an honor for me to be able to carry out the work I will present you today that was conducted in the framework of my master thesis at the University of Milano Bicocca. As you can see, I have strong biological background in biological science, but during my master, I tend to go towards social science and the human geography disciplines because I felt in the study of marine and coastal environment there was something missing. So I was kind of stubborn to want to go and pursue this road to try and integrate these disciplines. So I went towards the study of social-ecological system frameworks that we will see more in depth what it is in this webinar, but local and traditional ecological knowledge, small-scale fisheries, and tourism and its different forms, and the studies of environmental justice. To be able to have always the full pictures of all the different components that made up our coast and our ocean. Then I left academia for a while and pursued ocean literacy internship, focusing on ocean literacy. And there I understood also the importance of integrating the social component of marine systems in science. So fast forward to now, I went back to academia in a PhD program of national interest here in Italy, in Sicily. It's a PhD program of the University of Palermo, focused on biodiversity, but my thesis focused on social-ecological system applications in the Mediterranean Sea. So clearly things are moving also in the direction of opening up opportunities to work at this intersection between different disciplines. Overall, as I was saying, I'm an early career ocean professional, investigating the relationship between human communities and coastal and marine ecosystems. And today I'm bringing you my work of my master thesis that I had the pleasure to present at the International Geographer Union thematic conference on the ocean and seas in geographical thought. I would like also to point out that during this whole non necessarily linear path, there were many other non-formal education opportunities that brought up the today scholar that I'm today. So I imagine there are a lot of students, I hope, today. So yeah, just wanted to give you a little of background on that. So today we'll see social ecological systems as a framework, why it's so important, how we can apply it, and then, as said, we will go in depth on the case study conducted in Mexico, in the state of Guerrero, on the interaction between small-scale fisheries and sustainable tourism models. So we will see the methodology and the results obtained, and then I hope we will have some time to discuss this work together. So, why social ecological system frameworks? This framework has been identified as the most comprehensive conceptual framework to give back all the complexities of marine and social systems, and it applies particularly well on small-scale fisheries systems. This framework has been ultimately developed by Ostrom, the Nobel Prize in 2009, and from then many applications in marine and coastal systems has been identified. Especially why? Because for a long time we tried to understand marine and coastal systems from different disciplines perspective, and particularly analyzing ecosystems always dividing nature and the human dimension. We created a bias, let's say, to always identify human dimension as an anthropological impact. This is not necessarily true. We have a lot of examples of communities that develops a relationship with their environment, the ecosystem. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, now yes.
Okay, I lost you for a second. Sorry. So where we were. So to take back the human dimension in the studies of ecosystem is extremely relevant, also because it describes. We don't need perfect model, but a model that works to describe what we have. And coastal systems are extremely complex and made up of different actors. So we need to elaborate something that can tell us how we influence the ecosystem, but also how the ecosystem influences us. How do we do this? Through different techniques. Social-ecological system framework are mainly based on mixed methodologies. So it can include systematic review, stakeholder mapping, and also lots of methodologies from social science, such as questionnaires, focus groups, semi-structured interviews, workshops. The good thing is that you don't have to use them all the time to identify a social ecological system, but on the base of the social ecological system you are analyzing, you decide which instruments are best to describe it. So it really gives you the adaptability to take into account the local peculiarities of each case study site, which we all know it's extremely important and relevant in research, and in particular to produce and to produce documents that can well inform policy making and governance, to be able to include not only the qualitative and quantitative data coming from different disciplines, so from environmental sciences, known as hard science, and social science, but also to connect different knowledge systems that speaks different languages, but are equally important in the administration and understanding of territory, which we usually identify as academic ecological knowledge and local and traditional ecological knowledge. This to be able to understand at best the complex system we work with. So, going a little bit more in depth in the case study we will see today, I had the opportunity to carry out this research at a regenerative tourism destination, that is the Playa Viva. We could spend some time to explain the different tourism model, but for time constraint, let's keep it small. Let's say regenerative travel wants to cultivate a vision that it goes further what we know as sustainable tourism. In a general opinion, we know that sustainable tourism want to leave no trace behind. Knowing that it's not a realistic point of view, regenerative tourists want to strive on ensuring that the trace we leave back, it's positive. So they developed the social environmental impact project Regenerando Sierra y Mar, and I was lucky enough to be there in a moment where they were developing the sustainable fisheries node. So the work you will see today, it's at the baseline from where it's possible to build up. So why the focus on small-scale fisheries? Small-scale fisheries is a sector that it's adapted in every side of the globe. And because of this, it's very difficult to define. This is its biggest strength, but also one of its biggest challenge, because not being able to have a coherent definition all around the world, this often ends up in a lack of representation especially at policy making level. What we know is that up till now, assessment on fisheries mainly included biological and economical assessment that sometimes fails to include the social and community importance of a sector, especially when we speak of small-scale fisheries that clearly do not produce what commercial fisheries produce. So that's why social-ecological system frameworks was introduced in the study of small-scale fisheries, I would say around 10 years ago, and has many extremely interesting case study all around the world that can help us even maintaining the peculiarities of small-scale fisheries in the different regions to have a general framework we can refer to. So I'm sorry that this field of study is full of acronyms that are extremely similar, but small SSF is small-scale fisheries, SESF is the Social-Ecological System Framework. Why it's important to analyze the social component of small-scale fisheries, because the coastal communities have a lot of actors and they interact, and so if these interactions are constructive or destructive only depends on the type of interaction that it's developed between the two sectors. Notably in literature we have many examples on the interaction between small-scale fisheries and tourism, for example, or small-scale fisheries and conservation, mainly in the form of MPA, of marine protected areas, MPAs, but also alternative fisheries conservation measures. These are usually the three actors we can find when referring to small-scale fisheries systems. And while you can see in the cited literature some examples of this interaction, we will focus today on the case of Costa Grande in Mexico. Why this is important? I feel that sometimes I lose you.
Can you hear us, Maria Giovanna?
Yes, now yes. I'm so sorry.
Maybe, sorry, Maria Giovanna, you could turn off your camera so the data, you can save a little bit of data.
I don't know, but I don't think it's about that. I will try, but I don't think
Okay.
it's about
Thank you.
the audio. Anyway, while I find the video, my research tried to understand the interaction between small-scale fisheries cooperative and tourism, to understand if their interaction can also be a driver of change for the communities the fisheries cooperatives are part of, and in which modalities this interaction can be considered sustainable. Why this is peculiarly important? Because the small-scale fishery sector is highlighted as a key actor in engaging in sustainable ocean economy, but we lack case studies to understand how this can really be achieved. So going in deeper on the case study, Mexico is we can recognize it as a mega diverse country. It hosts a huge biodiversity and it has more than 11,000 kilometers of coastline. It's interesting because almost half of the population lives in coastal zones, and also it counts up for 2% of the global marine catches. And both these numbers are expected to rise in the future. What is also peculiar is that most of its fleet is made up of what we use today as parameter to define small-scale fisheries, so vessels below 12 meters, and there's a significant portion of the fleet made up of small-scale fisheries. In particular, my research was carried out in the state of Guerrero, which is a state with a coastline of 500 kilometers and a population of 3.5 million inhabitants. Guerrero is at the same time recognized as a low-income state, but also the what is known Triangle of the Sun. So three international tourism destination, very important, that you can see in orange, that it's Acapulco, Zihuatanejo, and Taxco. And it has been very relevant for the government and the administration to understand how to distribute these economic fluxes that comes to these municipalities to the municipalities around. So this is the context in which my research position. You can see my case study area in blue. So in the middle between these two important tourism destinations. More in detail on small-scale fisheries in Mexico, just a couple concepts. Small-scale fisheries and fisheries in general are regulated by the Ley General de la Pesca y Agricultura Sustentable. It's interesting, a couple points I will show you in a second. But Mexico also is part of many international conventions and panels on sustainable ocean economy. They ratified their strategy for sustainable ocean economy, where they adhered to the 30x30 initiative and put also the ambitious objective of an integrated management of 100% of marine spaces under national jurisdiction by 2025. They recently published the new strategy. And small-scale fisheries in this context are mainly organized in cooperatives. Why I bring up this legislative side? Because in Mexico it has been introduced these conservation measures that are zonas de refugio pesquero, that sorry for the comparison table in Spanish, but I think it's easy to understand as such. Zonas de refugio pesquero are conservation measures that are similar to what we know as marine protected areas, but not quite. So it requires usually include the smaller areas and needs to be required by the fishing cooperative. So it's built up together with the fishing sector to ensure better use of the common pool resources that it's exploited by fisheries. And what is interesting is that up till now, zonas de refugio pesquero were mainly developed in states with high tourism fluxes, Baja California Sur, in the Yucatan Peninsula, but there are not many examples in other states with economy mainly delineed by other sectors. So this could be, we can keep this in mind for later. So this was the case study design, the original case study design. I wanted to report the one I made with a pen because trying to put at system socio-ecological system, it's complex, is a messy exercise. So eventually this turned into this. But yeah, I wanted to keep it the duality. You will see it more in the next slides. What you can see, it's I mainly tried to put out the actors I was referring to. So in my system, we had small-scale fisheries, of course, tourism, and then what is we called here case study area, could be called biodiversity, decline in the mangrove system and lagoon systems, and marine side. Of course, this was useful to understand the complexity of the system. I was not able to go through all the different sides of this graph, but from here you can work down which side you want to focus more. In particular, to elaborate an in-depth understanding of this system and produce a qualitative inquiry that could be well descriptive, I decided to conduct semi-structured interviews, initially with the two fishing cooperatives present on the territory, and then with other actors pertaining to different sectors, namely an international tourism operator, a local tourism operator, an academia representative pertaining to tourism studies, and director of a local NGO working at the interface between environmental conservation and the interaction with small-scale fisheries cooperatives in area with more tourism. Then thematic analysis was applied on the data collected. For the first round of interview, let's say with fishers, it was I mainly followed the chronological perspective, so analyzing the history, the actual state of the sector, with a focus on the challenges, and then their vision for the future with a focus on the possible interaction with the tourism industry. What you see on the right, it's the visual elicitation I used for the second round of interviews with the other stakeholders. This horrible word. But this was the original one. This is the adapted version. This was very useful to stimulate a discussion on their knowledge on small-scale fisheries systems in the region. Then we also discussed together the results obtained with fishers that are this one, but we will go in depth now in this. What came out from this research? Starting from the history of fishing in the region, what was, in my opinion, extremely notable was two main traits. So the local ecological knowledge held by the fishing cooperatives on fishing grounds and the biodiversity present in the area. I spent a lot of effort working on the lexicon used by the cooperatives to translate it in what also biologists can be familiar with. And then artisanal techniques that took into account seasonality and the movement of the different catches. Then an extremely relevant point that came out was the women's role in the fishing industry, which it's something that needs to be addressed and tries to be addressed by many international frameworks. What came out is that before much more women were present inside the cooperatives, since they were making important productive post-production, post-catch and selling operations. But with the formal structure of the cooperative lately, many women were put aside because they were, in the words of Fisher, were not out fishing. So this puts an important highlight on what are formal and informal economies and how the fishing sector, especially the small-scale fishery sector, influence much broader part of the community than what we can grasp with economical analysis. Then, moving to the present state, based on the local ecological knowledge held by the cooperatives, the local limitations were put on top of governmental ones to ensure good reproduction of the stocks. And, well, we won't go through all of the points wrote here, but these were the main challenges that were identified by the fishers. And what is relevant, we can see most of them seems to pertain to one thematic sphere. I had to do this analysis work to be able to give it some structure, but both from outside, problematic people inside the community, lack of governmental subsidies, scarcity of marine resources, and infrastructural problem do not really pertain always to one thematic sphere. So while for the sake of analysis, it's interesting to divide them, we have to keep in mind that all of these challenges overlap with each other and pertain to thematic spheres that may not be what we think most directly. Then moving to the future visions, let's say the vision for the future is not particularly positive for what concerns the small-scale fisheries sector in the region. Many fishers highlighted the economic instability and the growing scarcity of marine resources, also always going further. So most of them hope none of their sons and daughters pursue this activity, but there are some good interaction identified with potentially the tourism industry, in particular for what concern pesca tourism and whale watching activities. I would like to stop a second here because what is interesting, two interesting things I see from these results. One is that the direct sell to hotels and in general restaurants of the coast is not seen as positive because it would add up an energetic cost on the chain of production and selling operations. So the fishing cooperatives will rather keep the actual method of selling to an intermediate buyer that of course pay less for their catch than to take care of the selling operations. On the other side, the focus on pesca tourism and whale watching, it's interesting because it could be a way to differentiate their activity and also create a system in which the focus moves from the catch to the experience itself. So it's a very interesting perspective to look at. Here you can see summed up all the things we just said together, divided in the three different chronological perspectives that helped us analyzing this data. Now what you will see appear is the opinions and the narratives brought by the other actors. So you will see them up here now. So you can see that some overlap. The one you see with the round in bold, those were highlighted both by the actors as the international tourist operator, local tourism operator, academia and NGOs. While some other thematics emerged that were not directly addressed by fishers, but might be relevant in the analysis of understanding on how the stakeholders interact and what is the value that is given to biodiversity and territory in general. So I don't think we have much time to go in depth in this, but for example, you can see here plastic waste and marine litter, for example, was not pointed out by the fishers, but of course for a local tourism operator, it gets a different perspective.
Yeah, Maria Giovanna, you have 10 minutes left.
Okay, great. We're wrapping up. Thank you. It's interesting to see to study through this thematic analysis the different dynamics going on between the different actors of the coast. Here is another way of presenting these same results. So on the left you can see the data that emerged from the interviews with the fishers, and on the right you can see the stakeholder perspective on that was mentioned. So what was let's see highlights emerged that local ecological knowledge is not present on the whole coast. Also, the fact that cooperatives put local limitations on top of governmental one was not much known outside the fishing sector. Women involvement that was also not known has been seen as a potential of involvement for the whole community and to extend the formal recognition of fisheries to broader level. And then a lot of discussion has been going on challenges identified by the fishers and how we could work towards creating a different reality for the territory. So I would like to point out, wrapping up, that of course there were some limitations to this study. My positioning, for example, as a marine biologist, and the internalized bias of the different categories regarding marine biologists investigating the coast. Of course, it would be interesting to broaden the scope of the research to other fishing cooperatives along the coast to see commonalities and the differences, but also what will be, in my opinion, also extremely interesting is to go and analyze the informal fishing communities that are present on the coast, because not all fishing communities are organized in cooperatives, and this could bring a critical point of discussion, of course, also for the representation at policymaking level. But overall, this is the sum up of 6 months' work, and relating back to what we were mentioning, the Zonas de Refugio Pesquero, this might be a good base for a future co-design of one of these in a state where there are none at the moment. So yeah, this can be one of the way in which we can put together a lot of little bricks that we use to analyze coastal territories, and to design together coastal studies that are representative of the complexities we have in front of us. So yeah, I will stop here. Thank you so much for your attention for now, and let's open the mic. I will be more than happy to discuss and hear your opinion on this.
Thank you very much, Maria Giovanna. It was really an interesting and inspiring presentation, and congratulations on your work. There are some comments in the Q&A boxes, and one is from Mexico, by the way. Jose Vargas Hernandez, who says that excellent presentation. I find it quite relevant, being myself from Mexico, and congratulations to you. So we have a question from one participant, and the question is, did you consider the long-term feedbacks of tourism potential on the overall SSF system? For example, while pescatourism can increase SSF income, it actually helps diversifying the sources of income. Will it create governance issues, societal conflicts in the long run?
Is the question done? See?
Yeah.
Thank you so
Please.
much for this question, because I don't think we had the opportunity to elaborate on this. Yes, it's extremely interesting to see the models in which pescatourism and tourism in general can impact small-scale fisheries. While this will be a great theme for next research, what came out from this research was the role of the local tourism operator that took care of the pescatourism operations. So let's say also discussing with the tourism operator came out that what is let me phrase it. What's interesting is that in many mass tourism destinations, one example is Zihuatanejo, for example, just up the coast. What happened is that fishers became tourism operators. So being this phenomena not well understood, they saw the economic possibility and just went for it. What it's interesting, it's to see what the role of local tourism operator that can work between the fishers cooperatives and the tourism to, let's say, safeguard the position of fishers as fishers, and not the necessity of them to become tourism operator, which is the tricky thing between the pesca tourism model and the other tourism model. But yes, only time will tell, but I hope I answered your questions, because there are many study fields that goes in the understanding of this, and for example, also on the what in the tourism industry is perceived as the authenticity of the experience. That it's a very interesting theme to to go in the rabbit hole and understand. But yeah, I hope I answered your questions. But
Okay, thanks a lot. We can move to the next questions because they are coming up. So there is one question that is about the women's declining role. So what did you find to explain the decline in women's participation, as you highlighted when dealing with the challenges, if I'm not mistaken?
yes, what is interesting is that clearly the importance of women historically it's well recognized by the fishing community, but what happens is that moving in the structuralization of governance and organizations, small space it's left for informal help and the work of care. That is another huge theme that is usually taken up by women, especially in fishing communities. I will say that that happens because what was said is that while recognizing their importance, it was not possible to keep them as a participant in the fishing community, in the fishing cooperative, I'm sorry, the fishing cooperatives, because they were not doing the fishing operations. So that's a tricky point in the organization of cooperatives, because there's definitely a way to include the selling operations and the added value that is the work that and represent the work of women in the region. Also, this relates, for example, with the market that changed, no? Because till it was women taking care of the selling operation, all the economy was going back to the same fishing community. While now with intermediate buyers that are easier to contact, and they buy all the fish. But it's of course the economic value goes down. So I will say it's this a tricky part between what is formalization of economy and organization and what is left behind the scenes, no? And this is a very common path in small-scale fisheries studies. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I hope I answered.
Yeah, there are a couple of questions more. One is about the social ecological system framework can be effectively adapted to integrate local ecological knowledge from small-scale fishing communities with sustainable tourism strategies while ensuring environmental justice and long-term governance resilience in the regions. This is one.
I'll open it and read it because
Yeah, it's from Andrea Nestola. Yeah, it's quite long and
Yes, sorry.
yeah.
Really sure. How can it be adapted? It is adapted by definition. Like that's what it's interesting about these instruments, is that it recognize it. I would love to link up maybe some literature on this, but the conceptual framework of social ecological system really is made up of many small components that you can adapt in your peculiar studies. So you have the common pool resource, the different fluxes. So I would say. For what concern environmental justice and governance resilience, it's one of the few frameworks that manage to keep this into account. So I will say it adapts naturally, but it's also one of the reasons why it's so difficult to apply as a study, because it takes a lot of different expertise and a long time to develop. It's not a sectoral study. So yeah, I would say it adapts naturally.
Okay, let's go quicker to the following questions, because there are more than a couple. Luckily, this means that the webinar was really interesting. So one is, can you diagnose the negative impacts the pilot regional fishing vessel register recently established in the Gulf of Guinea can have on the coastal communities and the small-scale fishers, going by your social ecological management model?
Wait, let me open it. Can you tell me?
Yes, it's from George Wilcox
George,
from Nigeria.
impacts the pilot regional fishing vessel. I am not aware
maybe.
of this case study. It sounds extremely interesting, but no, I'm not aware. But I encourage you to try to apply this model to see if you can find all the negative impact I assume policies may generate on small scale fisheries. Please feel free to contact me to keep me updated and to exchange more in-depth opinions if you go through in this direction.
Okay, another direct question. Does pescatourism cause overfishing?
The quick answer will be no, definitely less, because maybe I was not able to put the highlight on that. But what happens with pescatourism? That I understand it's a model of tourism that it's more well established in the Mediterranean area. So the value of the experience of the touristic side of the experience, it's not on the catch, it's on the experience itself. So what came out from my experience in Mexico, but also more recent experience, is that the value is taken away from the catch. So it doesn't really matter how much fish you catch. So this could also disincentivize some illegal and unreported fishing operations, like small sizes or fishing in not allowed seasons, because you will still get paid even if no fish it's being catched, and this makes a huge difference on also the economic stability of fishing cooperatives. I remember this was the main highlight that we remember when we started to try these experiences. So no, I would say absolutely no. It could be a way to limit overfishing, because it takes the economic value somewhere else.
And maybe foster some, let's say, environmental awareness amongst the tourists. Another question for you, based on your experience, what advice would you give to projects focused on mangrove protection and restoration that aim to actively involve fishermen in the process?
Wow, thank you so much, Tiago, for these questions, because I think it's the extremely relevant, and I will say the next point also my research. Fishing, I don't know the mangrove region you are talking about now, but where I was, there was some fishing in the mangroves. So I would say one of the most important side is to establish trust and natural feedback relationship with the fishers. So for me, a big portion of my work is what it's not seen in the results of this job, that is building trust, making a huge focus on the fact that and building on what was constructed on the figure of marine biologist, that sometimes it's not a nice figure to interact with, especially for fishers, because they're coming to tell us the fish we fish is too small, that we should change our techniques, which is based on their experience, what they mainly had in the past in many case studies locations. So I will say work a lot in this direction. There are very good community-based conservation toolkits that can help you building up on that. Or I may suggest the incredible seminar held by Pancho Aguirres at the beginning of September for this same coastal resilience talks. Highly suggested. But yeah, I will say this: position yourself in a way and do that work that it's behind the results, or explaining the importance of the mangrove system, which is something that most small-scale fisheries communities that insist on that same territory usually are well aware of. But that can really help to change the perspective of the researcher, in that knowing that we will always remain marine biologists in their eyes.
I'm afraid that we don't have enough time to answer to the other questions, but I think that Maria Giovanna could easily go through them and then
Yes,
reply. Okay. Again, we have another question on the best strategy on how the best strategy of engaging fishing cooperatives in Sardinia, for example. Michela Bazzoni asks. So please, Maria Giovanna, if you can answer.
Yes, please get in touch with me, and we can continue the discussion. I will share for a second my email again, so we can.
Yes, please.
So please take it and text me. There is no magic formula. That's because of the peculiar characteristic of fishing communities all around the world. That it's also what makes them a great ally in constructing resilience coasts. So this was my experience, but I would be more than happy to continue the discussion with any of you. This is my email. Please feel free to text me.